Yes, been, and I hope you will always be a friend of journalists. Ambassador Van Damme his term of office is expiring. Yes, it expired. It's expiring.
Not the 4th.
Yes, yes. But what I can say is that Ambassador Van Damme is leaving Zimbabwe after completing his term of office. He has been here since 2014. A year after the election or the end of the government of national unity in 2013. He has witnessed a lot of activities and events, political events, social events, as well as cultural and entertainment. He was all over. Yeah, I could say that. So he's leaving us. So he said, guys, I can't leave without saying goodbye to you guys, fellow journalists. So once again, we've invited him. He was here when he came. We invited him when he came. We also invited him in the middle of his term of office. He was with us. He has been answering to our questions. He calls, tweets. He's always online, as all of us know. So he said, guys, can I just say goodbye to you? So we said yes. As a friend of journalists, and as journalists, we said no, you can't go without saying goodbye to us. So here is the ambassador. He's just here to say goodbye, guys, to you. But I told you that you don't need just to say goodbye to us. We have got some questions to you. Some of the questions we wanted him to answer. Of course, he was very responsive. When we called him, when we tweet, when we emailed him for some questions, but we said no, we need to have your final words and answering all the questions with the journalists were having and still have. And he said no, I'll come and answer your questions. So Ambassador Van Damme, these are your colleagues, your usual colleagues, whom you have been working with. Before I give you the mic to give your words, maybe I just want to give you some pointers on some of the issues which we as journalists feel you also need to touch on in your remarks. You have been here. You came here in 2014. There was President Robert Mugabe, now the former president. There were activities and events which unfolded. Particularly the November 18 event. We did not hear the EU voice loud and clear. Maybe me, I didn't. I don't know my colleagues, but they told me that we need to hear your comments pertaining to that, what happened, the transition. If it is the transition, some say the coup, which was not a coup, we don't know. We want you to address that. And also, the issue of the Brexit, Britain moving away or leaving the bloc. Some are saying that maybe Britain is going to influence more countries to leave the bloc. So we just want you to address that. And also the future, what's the future of the non-governmental organizations? In particular, the civil society organizations which deal with human rights issues, electoral reforms. And are you, as the EU, are you going to recommend that no, in Zimbabwe, these people still have a duty to play? Or you say no, the elections are over, maybe we are not going to see EU giving more funding or supporting and giving more support to these organizations. I think those are some of the three issues which I, as the chairperson, taking advantage of being the chairperson. Yes, maybe abusing my position. I would want you to address in your remarks. After the ambassador is addressed, I will open the floor to the journalists to ask you questions. So, guys, Ambassador Philip Van Damme for you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and again, my sincere apologies of being responsible for interrupting your favorite program of the day. But I guess you have had your doses and you were anyways exhausted, so thanks for your nice welcoming words. It's true, despite sometimes giving the contrary impression that I am a friend of the journalists. And even over the recent days, some people may have doubted my friendship, but for me, friendship, and I have always said that, friendship is based on an open and frank communication. And I have always tried to do that, sometimes beyond my diplomatic restraint, but that's how I am, and I'm thankful that you take it not too badly if sometimes I have been harsh even with you. Let me maybe just as introduction introduce you, for those who don't know him yet, Thomas van Hendel, who is my deputy in the delegation and who will be in charge while waiting for my successor. And he warned me just before starting, Philip, don't be provocative and repeat the words you have been saying a couple of times about the quality of the local press. So keep it positive tonight. So okay, I said I will not say anything about the quality of the press, but I will say something about the gender imbalance in the press, because I notice once more that the better half of the humanity is underrepresented here tonight. But the few of you who are here, most welcome. So, this being said, let me address the three questions you suggested as an introduction. And maybe I will start from the easiest one, which for me is the Brexit law. Some of you will have seen my position on Brexit on Twitter. I have never been I have always tried to be extremely clear on that. I think it's extremely regretful, the referendum and the way the aftermath of that referendum has been managed by the government of UK. You have seen the dynamics in UK of the last year and a half. Basically, I think for me, and that's a very personal opinion now, I'm not speaking as head of delegation, from my guts now. What we have seen over the last 18 months is in fact that nobody knows exactly, or nobody has really understood what the referendum was about. Nobody knew exactly what they were voting for, those who wanted to leave, because there is no consensus on the conditions of the Brexit. And 18 months later, they still are not clear on what they want. But those who start realizing what it may imply have second thoughts. So I don't believe one moment that there will be a contagion effect. On the contrary, I'm still thinking that the final say on Brexit has not been said. There is a huge campaign in UK now, which is gaining speed, I think, and momentum on asking for a new vote. So I'm absolutely not pessimistic about Europe. I have concerns about populist voices throughout Europe, but the election of a pro-European president in France last year proves that Europe can be a winning electoral team as well, if you're open and frank and you're not hiding behind nationalist, fake and populist arguments. So I don't know if that's sufficient at this stage, but no contagion, whatever Trump may think of it. but on the contrary, a counter-revolution, I think, which will enhance and deepen the European project. The third question then. Role of the NGOs and notably human rights defenders and those NGOs involved in electoral processes after the elections. We have always said, we may not always have been extremely convincing in that, but I think that's one of the lessons learned of the last 5 years, is that we are not supporting elections, we are supporting electoral processes. And we are not supporting ad hoc events, but we are supporting consolidation of democracy, human rights, rule of law. And that's a long-term project. This is not a cyclical project linked to elections. And what we have seen over the last 5 years is precisely that sometimes essential reforms or essential activities are being postponed until we are getting closer to the elections, and then you run out of time. So one of the lessons learned of these last 5 years, I think, is that these activities are, should be seen in a continuity, and that you should, on the contrary, try to front load some of these activities so that you're prepared by the time of the next elections. And I think one big difference with the past is that this time we have had EU electoral observation mission and also other international observation missions, which will publish a report probably around mid-October, and this report will contain a series of recommendations. And these recommendations will be a guidance, a guideline for the EU delegation on engaging with the government, with the stakeholders, with civil society, on ways to implement these recommendations in a timely way, far ahead of the 2023 elections. So there is no question of a fallout or a breaking down of our relation with civil society, but on the contrary, a continuation of our support as in the past. Coming to the first question about the events of November, I mean, we have been asked that question over and over again over the last 8 months. I think the EU has been quite consistent and clear on these issues. I don't think it's to the EU to make a final judgment on historic events in a third country. What everybody has seen is on the 18th of November, because you refer to the 18th of November, the Saturday 18th of November is an outpouring of enthusiasm across all divides, across political divides, across ethnic divides, age divides, wealth divides. Everybody was in the streets to support an event, however you label it. That's one sociological observation. Second one is that the region, SADC and African Union, after some hesitation, also accepted this transition as compatible with the regional standards. So again, I'm not sure that it would have been to us to comment in a different way against public opinion and against the region. And the rest is history. What is important, and I have always said that from my arrival here, and I remember the first question which were asked in 2014 when I met the media for the first time was my opinion on the past, you know, on this, the the imposition of what you call sanctions and what we call restrictive measures, and what was my opinion on that, and what was my opinion on the accelerated land reform, and what was my opinion on the past. And I have always consistently said, I'm not a historian and I'm not rewriting your history. I'm looking forward. And looking forward, what is important for me is that your country makes progress on the road towards democratic consolidation, that you find a way of building a society where adverse opinions have a place, or being tolerated and respected, and even listened to. What is missing in this country is that spirit of inclusivity, where you can dialogue with people in a civilized way and sometimes agree to disagree, but still that the conversation continues and that you give a place to these adverse opinions. And that's a challenge for whoever who will win these elections at a certain moment. It will be a challenge in this country to find ways to continue that dialogue with those who have lost these elections, whoever has lost these elections. Elections is not about a winner-take-all type of process. It is a process where indeed, once upon a while, opinions are exchanged, and these opinions may evolve over time. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but the losers have a place and have a future, and the winners of today may lose tomorrow. And therefore you need these platforms for discussion where the opposition has a role to play. Of course, in Parliament, holding the government to account, but also outside the Parliament, where they can participate in the debate in different possible ways. And that's what we have to look for. And I think that's one of the challenges now, after 8 months of post-events, is indeed, are we moving towards a more inclusive society where the huge division which has been revealed by the elections, whatever the outcome of the elections, one thing is sure, is that these elections have revealed a deep division within society. How can we heal these divisions? How can we rebuild? And I said it this morning in a comment to a statement made by ZCC, Zimbabwe Council of Churches. How can this country rebuild itself? You know, and Zimbabwe Council of Churches made a couple of proposals. I think that's extremely important and the main challenge for the future of this country. That's as a starter.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Van Damme. I think of course, in your maybe conclusion, which I do not want to take as a conclusion because I want to maybe force you to say a few words before you go, your wishes for Zimbabwe, before I open the floor to journalists to ask you some questions which they do have. Thank you very much. You have answered, you have attempted to, you have answered my questions, but I've discovered that you have decided to take a sociological observation and perspective as opposed to an ontological one. We know you are very vital. The blog is very important in Zimbabwe's future, the past and future. But you said you're not a historian. But I do understand that you do have an ontological observation on Zimbabwe, which you said as a diplomat. I know you said you will not delve into that. It's fine with that. I think, but journalists who are going to ask you some questions. Maybe your wishes for Zimbabwe or to Zimbabweans as you live before I open the space for the journalists to interact with you. Thank you.
Well, I have already mentioned that this is a divided society. This is a society which is extremely inward-looking and looking into its past, looking backwards rather than forwards. And if you want to develop this country in a sustainable and inclusive way, this mindset has to shift. And I have said it to some of you bilaterally. I engaged in a political and policy dialogue with these governments 4 years ago, and I have noticed how difficult it is to enter into a kind of normalized relationship, because the suspicion of the past, this defensive attitude, is still very deeply ingrained, and it takes time to overcome this suspicion of the past. And you see it also during the electoral process. Some of the comments made was the lack of inclusivity and transparency, because I think this is this deep-grained reflex of the ones of outside institution, of outside the country. They may not have good intentions. So let's be prudent and let's try to keep them out. And that's exactly the opposite of what an open society should be. And you can't develop a liberal democracy without openness. So what is needed in this country is dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. So that indeed these I would almost say this paranoia, but let's say this suspicion can be overcome, and that's, again, you can start normal relations among yourselves, but also with the outside world.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now, colleagues, it now gives me time to open the floor for questions to the Ambassador. If you have questions, I'll take 3 questions at a time so that we allow him time to listen and to respond to these questions.
Ambassador Van Damme, if you are given an opportunity before you leave Zimbabwe to meet the former president, Robert Mugabe, what would you say to him?
Well, I would want to ask Ambassador, you have seen what has been happening for the past, let's say, 9 months now, and 4 years. To your colleagues here, journalists, what could be your advice in terms of putting Zimbabwe?
My questions, I have 2 questions, and I hope I will be indulged to ask them in succession. The first one relates to Brexit. I have heard you, or I understand you to be saying that the British, that some of their citizens are thinking of having a second referendum about the issue, which is a fact. But having a matter decided twice by an election, isn't it defeating democracy that people could be wrong in their decision and they should live with the consequences of being wrong in their decision, than to compel them to vote again, hoping that they will vote it right? And my second question is in relation to looking at the developments which have taken place in the United States of America, which have some symbiotic relationship with the European Union, that they have renewed their sanctions. What is the position of the EU to the restrictive measures that they put on Zimbabwe going forward?
Thank you, colleagues. I think there are 4 questions to attempt.
Robert Mugabe. Can I take a non-political but a humanitarian position here?
Yeah.
And I'm taking that angle because that's the impression he left me on Independence Day in April 2015, and I haven't changed my vision since then. I don't know whether you remember the Independence Day 2015. It was a rainy, grey, rainy day. And you saw that old man, that old, frail man, alone on that track, doing the salutes to the army, I mean, to the guards. And the impression he gave me is exactly that. A frail, old, lonely man. And I think he's that more than ever. And you know that with old age, I don't know how we will develop, but it's difficult to kid. Okay. And this old man seems to be a bitter old man now, for the way he was forced to leave. So I think that way should be found to let him go in a dignified way. Now he has to prepare his departure. I mean, also his physical departure. He's a religious man. And when I spoke to him only once, when I presented my credentials, and we spoke about that, about redemption, and about his relation to God. I think we have to give him and encourage him to prepare for his final departure, and try indeed to protect him against those who try to manipulate him. I mean, he has been something for this country, whether we like it or not. And the way things have been evolving over the last couple of months is painful for him, but also not helpful for the country, I think. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. 9 months, 4 years, what have we seen? I'm an impatient man. And when I arrived, my mandate was to re-engage with this country, not with a man or with a regime, but with a country, to support the essential political and economic reforms required to put this country back on a sustainable growth path. Economically sustainable, socially sustainable, that means inclusive, pro-poor, environmentally sustainable growth path, politically sustainable growth path. And these reforms have been extremely slow to come. And there is a favorite expression in this country which says, walk the talk. So that concern hasn't changed over these 4 years. This country has to start walking the talk, whoever talks. On Brexit, I find these arguments, and I have been engaging on that regularly on my Twitter account, I find this argument that you can't change your opinion a very strange one, and claiming that change your opinion is anti-democratic, I find it very strange, because that's why you have elections for, so that you can reassess your opinion on a regular basis, and if you're no longer satisfied by those who are leading you, to kick them out, and to change your opinion. And of course, as I said earlier on Brexit, people were badly informed, maybe even manipulated in some cases. So people have the right to change their opinion. And I have always said as well that national referenda are a very tricky issue. When you go to the elections, you vote for people based on a broad worldview or a broad view on a whole range of policies. And you weight these different things, because probably you never have one politician which 100% represents your personal convictions. But you have people who get closer to your broader visions than others. When you have a referendum, you vote on one single issue and you don't boundary them or weigh them against other issues. And that leads to extremely biased positioning of things. And very often also a mixing of things, because you never know what people are voting for in a referendum. Is it on the issue itself, or is it on the broader context in which you want to punish the government for a whole range of issues? Or where you express your frustrations about globalization, being left behind, and so forth. So if you analyze the results of the Brexit referendum, it's quite clear that a lot of people voted for things which were perceived as indirectly linked to the EU integration process, but which were in fact related to far different and broader issues about globalization, migration, unemployment, and so forth. And the populists make the link to Europe, although everybody knows that that link is extremely weak. So people can change their opinion, and by the way, the elections which Mrs. May called for were lost by Mrs. May, because she had to form a coalition government, I think the first coalition government in UK in ages, with the UDP, the Irish Northern Ireland minority. So you can't say that it's anti-democratic to change opinion or to have a new majority. So what the people ask for is not to force the government to change position, but to give an opportunity to people to express their possibly changed views. And that's, I think, extremely democratic. Now, the second question on US restrictive measures against this country, no, it's not to me to comment on that. You ask the American ambassador what he has to say on that. You know, ZidERA is a complex act. It's an initiative by Congress, so it has nothing to do with the president per se. It has nothing to do with the elections per se. It has to do with a process which started, as you remember, earlier this year, and which coincided in its conclusion with the elections, but is not linked to the elections. And it's just an update of the existing Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Reform Act.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Okay, it's fine. We'll give you the chance. We'll give you the chance. Okay. Yeah, follow-up question.
No, the follow-up question was, you missed my question on the EU's position. I asked directly that would the EU be following what the US has done, because you have restrictive measures on Zimbabwe. Would the EU be making similar gestures which the US has done, or are you going to review your position on Zimbabwe?
All right. Yeah, maybe to assist you.
Yes. We don't have to follow or not the US. We have a position where we have remaining restrictive measures. It has nothing to do with ZidERA. ZidERA is not about restrictive measures. This is about the attitude of the US and the international multilateral agencies. On restrictive measures, we have still 2 people on the restrictive measures list, which are the 2 Mugabes. And we have the Zimbabwe defense industry on the restrictive measures list. So we're speaking of totally different issues. And what we will do with these restrictive measures, we have always been very clear. If the conditions are fulfilled, we can revise them at any moment. But it's far too early today, and it's not to me to comment on that, because as you know, this is a council decision. It's far too early now. We haven't even seen the electoral observation mission's recommendations so far, so we can't even open a discussion on these issues. But these are totally unrelated issues. As I said, it's not a fundamental revision, it was an update on the US side of ZIDERA, not of restrictive measures, but of ZIDERA. And that's what it is.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think you've answered the questions. I'll come to you, Jensen. Maybe I would also ask you guys to say out your name if you have an organization representing, so that we can capture you very well here. Thank you.
My name is Elaine Charlie, a freelance journalist. Are you implying that you are going to carry the review on the restrictive measures using the report by the EU delegation as a barometer?
Yeah, Jensen, then
Right, my name is Jensen Ndungakwa. I run a small organization, it's still a laptop organization, called the Revolutionary Research Institute of Zimbabwe. Right. But anyway, I'm not a bad list ambassador. When you were commenting on Brexit, I followed your words quite closely. You said something like nationalist, fake, and populist arguments. That is something in your opening remarks. That was huge. When you were commenting about the transition that Gary introduced of November 18, your words, different adjectives. You said something like, we could not go against SADC, AU, and the public opinion. When it came to Brexit, whether it was your own opinion, whether it was the opinion of the AU, there's something else. But my question is, I've listened to earlier presentations that you have done. You must have been in Rwanda sometime, I don't know. Are you saying our Zimbabwean scenario is a case study that you have come across in other African countries? Your comments to me suggested that we should not call it anything notorious like a coup, and we should not live in the past thinking that, I don't know how I can express it, but my point is mainly on our transition. How much more can you say?
Yeah, maybe give the mic to Caesar.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My name is Richard Chiza from Newsday. There's been some kind of confusion around your comments relating to rights abuses post-election. The reports have indicated President Mnangagwa has said you apologized to him for probably giving or misrepresentations around the numbers of people who were killed or injured during the skirmishes after the elections. And there was some kind of social media debate involving yourself and some people aligned to some PF or the government, in which you seem to indicate that the president had lied. What is your position?
That's 3 questions.
Yeah, 3 questions. I'm starting for you.
On restrictive measures, I mean, we have to go back to the origin of the restrictive measures, which were the elections, the run-up to the elections of 2002, and what we considered as flagrant violation of basic human rights principles with regard to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom, media freedom, and so forth. So when we regularly, and we do that annually, reassess our restrictive measures, we look to all the contextual environment related to rule of law, human rights, democracy, because that was at the origin of the restrictive measures. So we look to a variety of things, and of course it's clear that the way these elections have been conducted will be part and parcel of that evaluation. Not an exclusive part, but will be a contributing element to this assessment of the situation. Yes. Brexit. No, not Brexit, populism. There's a huge difference between public opinion and populism. Populism is not about public opinion, it's about a way of relying on a so-called public opinion and give yourself the right of speaking in the name of what you present as a public opinion, and in fact show intolerance against those who are not aligned on what you perceive as this public opinion. So populism, as it is defined by most scholars, is about claiming the monopoly on the expression of the mood of the people and an authoritarian tendency of intolerance against the others. So let's not mix up these two issues. Okay, I think that's absolutely clear. It's about concepts. The roots of the words are the same, the people, but the interpretations are completely different. Do I see similarities between the Zimbabwe case and other cases? Well, again, I'm not a historian, I'm an observer. One of the things I have observed in this country is that it's linked to this inward-looking mentality, is that the people in this country think they are unique and that they have unique history. That you're the only ones who have gone through a liberation war, the only ones who have gone through whatever, civil war whatsoever. Well, most countries in the world have gone through similar experiences. And most countries in the world have gone through the same necessity of building a nation through healing and reconciliation and constructive engagement among themselves. Thomas doesn't like to speak about my history, my Belgian history. He's German, I'm Belgian. And she's German as well, that's fine. Now, when I'm a strong believer in the European project, it's because I know the European history, which is not that special, different from the history of the African. We have built our nations on the blood of its people through civil wars, which may have been named differently in the past. These Germans have occupied my country twice, and extremely bloody wars. Now you can continue looking into the past and recriminate against them. My grandfather refused to travel to Germany now because that trauma, he never came over that trauma. But we have the duty to overcome these traumas and to build something together. That's the force of the European project. 5 years after 1945, the French Minister of Foreign Affairs offered his German counterparts to rebuild Europe together. And that remains the root of the European project. It's a peace project on the continent. And so, you know, no, you're not unique. Yes, there are all kinds of examples, and the nuances of these examples, everybody can make it up for itself. But you have to overcome your past. and look forward. Now, the debate of the last couple of days and this extremely divisive environment in which we evolve. Elections are an extremely emotional event. And it's extremely difficult, I have seen that over the last couple of months, to have a rational debate on some issues through Twitter. You know, Twitter is a limiting communication tool. I have seen that the same thing, you know, when Cecil the Lion was killed in August 2016, you know, and I saw people overreacting to that event. I tried one or twice, you know, to bring a little bit of rationality in the debate, and I was immediately overwhelmed and crushed by people from over the world, including, you know, actors in Hollywood who suddenly discovered Zimbabwe and the lions of Zimbabwe. So I immediately realized that in certain circumstances it becomes difficult to have a rational debate on things. And people move to extreme sentiments. And what I discovered here in this particular case is that you only have black or white. You have truth or lie. Man, in the real life, you have a whole range of colors, of shades of grey. You know, 50 shades of grey between black and white. I never spoke directly to the president of the last couple of weeks. I re-engaged with some of my colleagues, bilaterally with different people within government. We passed messages, and these messages are private messages and are not to be divulged. Okay. Now, how these private conversations are passed to the president of this country or not, how he understands these messages or not, I can't judge. What I can judge is what we have been calling for the last 2 weeks, including in our statement yesterday, is to say the raw reports of human rights abuses and of retribution. I'm not an investigator, I'm not the police of this country, it's not my role to investigate, but these reports should be taken seriously and investigated by the appropriate authorities. And that's the Human Rights Commission, that's the police, and that's where it stops. I'm not prejudging anything. I'm not saying that all stories are real or fake. I'm only saying that there are consistent reports. These reports are in general documented, so it's important for the image of this country that they are being investigated. I'm not prejudging on the truth level of everything. I'm not prejudging on who are the perpetrators. I'm just saying they have to be taken seriously and due process has to be followed. And those who claim to be victim and the witnesses of these human rights abuses have to be protected. And I'm sticking to that.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm going to also take maybe 2 rounds of questions if you guys still have some questions.